Before we dive into this wild ride, drop a quick hi in the comment section. It might feel like a tiny thing, but trust me, it makes a huge difference. That simple hi tells YouTube to share this story with even more sci-fi fans, more dreamers, more explorers just like us. I'd honestly love to see where you're tuning in from. Are you watching late at night with headphones on, or blasting this on a speaker while imagining the galaxy burning? Either way, say hi. I'll be checking.
The distress beacon cut through the void like a scream in the dark. It wasn't the usual automated signal that ships broadcast when their engines failed or their life support flickered. No, this was something far more desperate. This was the sound of a civilization watching its final stars go dark. The transmission crackled with static and terror, a voice speaking in broken galactic common, the universal language that held the scattered species of the cosmos together by the thinnest of threads. Please, anyone, we are the Volani people. Our world burns. The Kroth Dominion has come. They have taken our colonies. They have shattered our fleets. We are 2 million souls aboard 17 refugee ships. We have nowhere to go. Every council world has turned us away. We beg, we plead, is there anyone listening? Is there anyone who still believes mercy exists in this galaxy? The message repeated over and over, growing weaker with each cycle. 2 million voices reduced to a single plea, bouncing across light years of empty space, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, might care enough to answer. And then, in a corner of the galaxy that most species had marked as restricted space, something stirred. The humans had been listening. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the Volani refugee fleet. 17 ships, each one barely holding together, limping through space like wounded animals fleeing a predator. Behind them, distant but gaining, were the sleek, predatory vessels of the Kroth Dominion, a species that believed conquest was their birthright and mercy was a weakness to be exploited. How long until the Kroth catch them? Vasquez asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Commander Park, her tactical officer, ran the calculations. At current velocities, 47 hours, Admiral. The Volani ships are running on fumes. Some of them won't make it that long even without enemy fire. Vasquez nodded slowly, her jaw tight. She'd read the reports. She knew what the Kroth did to refugees. The Dominion didn't take prisoners, they took slaves. And those who couldn't work? They were simply eliminated. Efficiently, methodically, without hesitation. What's the status of the council? She asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it anyway. Lieutenant Shun spoke up from a communication station, her voice bitter. The Galactic Council has issued a statement of deep concern and called for diplomatic talks. The Axorian Empire sealed their borders. The Threnal Confederacy cited security concerns and denied the Volani entry. The Korvax, they didn't even respond. Vasquez closed her eyes for a moment. The Galactic Council, that grand assembly of ancient species who had ruled the stars for millennia, who had looked down on humanity when they first stumbled into faster-than-light travel just 70 years ago. The same council that had called humans aggressive barbarians and emotionally unstable primitives. The same council that had imposed strict limits on human expansion, fearing what humanity might become if given free rein among the stars. And now those same species were closing their doors, turning their backs on 2 million desperate souls because it was politically inconvenient to help them. Admiral? Park's voice cut through her thoughts. Your orders? Elena Vasquez opened her eyes, and in them burned something that had made humanity both feared and misunderstood across the galaxy. The stubborn, irrational, beautiful refusal to look away from suffering. Send a message to Earth Command, she said quietly. Tell them we're going to need backup. A lot of backup. Ma'am. Chun turned in her chair, eyes wide. Are we really? Yes, Vasquez cut her off. We're answering their call. Plot an intercept course with the Volani fleet. Maximum burn. And get me a direct line to those refugee ships. Someone needs to tell them they're not alone anymore. The bridge was silent for a heartbeat. Then, as one, her crew snapped into action. Because this was humanity. And when someone screamed into the void, they answered, even if the rest of the galaxy thought they were mad for doing it. Aboard the Villani flagship, Last Hope, a name that had never felt more bitterly accurate, elder matriarch Senna watched her people die slowly. The Villani were a graceful species, tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Right now, Senna's skin was a deep, mournful blue, the color of grief and desperation. Around her, the ship's bridge was a scene of controlled chaos. Engineers worked frantically to keep the aging engines running. Medical officers reported worsening conditions in the refugee quarters, food running low, water being rationed, children crying for homes that no longer existed. Matriarch, her communications officer said, his voice hollow with exhaustion, the Threnal Confederacy has officially rejected our asylum request. They've activated their border defenses. If we approach, they'll fire on us. Senna felt something break inside her chest. The Threnal had been allies once, trading partners, friends. What about the Korvax, she asked, though she could see the answer in her officer's darkening skin tone. No response, matriarch. They've gone silent. Of course they had. The Korvax were pragmatists. They wouldn't risk angering the Kroth Dominion over a species that was already defeated. The strong survived. The weak were forgotten. That was the way of the galaxy, wasn't it? Senna looked at the tactical display, at the red markers showing Kroth ships closing the distance. 47 hours. Less than 2 days before everything ended. 2 million souls and nowhere to run. Should we send the distress beacon again? Someone asked quietly. What's the point? Another voice answered, defeated. No one's coming. And then, impossibly, the communications console lit up with an incoming transmission. But it wasn't Galactic Common. It wasn't any language in the Council database. The translation matrix struggled for a moment before converting the sounds into something comprehensible. The voice was female, strong, carrying an accent that spoke of winds and oceans on a world the Villani had never seen. Villani Fleet. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Starship Indomitable. We have received your distress call. We are inbound to your position at maximum velocity. ETA, 14 hours. I repeat, help is coming. Hold on a little longer. Humanity is on the way. The bridge of the last hope fell silent. Senna's skin shifted rapidly through a dozen colors, confusion, disbelief, hope, fear, before settling on a pale, trembling gold. Humanity, her tactical officer whispered. But their restricted space. Their class, 7 probationary members. They don't have the authority to, I don't care what authority they have, Senna said, and her voice cracked with emotion. Send a response. Tell them we're grateful. Tell them we'll wait. She didn't say what everyone was thinking, that the humans were probably signing their own death warrant by coming. The Kroth didn't forgive interference. And humanity, for all their strange reputation, were still a young species with limited military strength. But they were coming anyway. What kind of species did that? What kind of people heard a cry for help and ran toward danger instead of away from it? The message reached Earth 16 hours later, traveling through the Ensemble network that connected human space. It arrived at Geneva, at the headquarters of the United Earth Government, in the middle of a heated council session. Secretary General Marcus Okafor read the report twice, then looked up at the assembled representatives of Earth's nations and colonies. Admiral Vasquez has committed the Indomitable to protect the Villani refugees, he said simply. The Kroth Dominion has already issued a warning. They're calling this an illegal interference in Dominion territorial acquisition. They've demanded we withdraw immediately. And if we don't, Ambassador Liu from the East Asian Coalition asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Then we're at war, Okafor said, with one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The Galactic Council will almost certainly condemn us. We could lose our probationary status. We could be sanctioned, blockaded, or worse. The room erupted into argument. Voices rose, some calling for caution, for diplomacy, for thinking about Earth's safety first. Others argued that this was exactly the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy, not by following the Council's cold pragmatism, but by standing for something better. Okafor let them argue for exactly 90 seconds. Then he brought his hand down on the table, hard enough to make the sound echo. "Enough," he said quietly. "I've already made my decision. I just wanted you all to understand what it means." He stood, his dark eyes sweeping across the room. "I'm authorizing the deployment of the 3rd, 5th, and 7th fleets. Every ship we can spare. We're going to bring those refugees home. And if the Kroth want to stop us, they're going to learn something about humanity that the rest of the galaxy seems to have forgotten." "And what's that, Secretary General?" someone asked. Marcus Okafor smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "That we're very good at war, but we're even better at protecting those who can't protect themselves. Launch the fleet." What would you do if you were in their position? If you saw an entire civilization on the brink of extinction, would you risk everything to save them? Or would you make the pragmatic choice, the safe choice, the one that every other advanced species in the galaxy was making? Humanity chose differently. They always had. The Kroth Dominion's response was swift and brutal. War leader Thaxor stood aboard his dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, his forearms folded across his armored chest, watching the tactical display with growing irritation. The Villani had been easy prey, a weak species that had grown fat and complacent during the Council's so-called Age of Peace. Their surrender should have been complete within days. But now there was a complication. "Humans," he said, the word dripping with contempt. "The Council's latest charity case. What are they thinking interfering with Dominion operations?" His tactical advisor, a younger Kroth with ambitious eyes, pulled up data on humanity. They're a Class 7 probationary species, war leader. They've only had FTL capability for 70 years. Their military is small, perhaps 300 capital ships total. They have no significant allies. By all measurements, they should be irrelevant. And yet they're coming anyway, Thaxor mused. Either they're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. How many ships are they sending? Initial scans show one vessel war leader, a heavy cruiser, the Indomitable. It's currently positioned between our fleet and the Villani refugees. Thaxor's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. One ship? One ship stands between the Dominion and our prize, and they think this will matter. But even as he spoke, something nagged at him. He'd read the classified reports about humanity, the ones the Council tried to keep quiet. The humans had an unusual military doctrine. They didn't fight the way other species did. They were unpredictable, asymmetric, willing to take casualties that would make any rational species surrender immediately. The Council called them dangerous. They called them unstable. They called them survivors. War leader, his communications officer interrupted. "The human vessel is hailing us." "Put through," Thaxor commanded. "Let's hear what they have to say." The face that appeared on his screen was not what he expected. Human females, he'd been told, were supposed to be the soft, emotional ones, the nurturers, not the warriors. But Admiral Vasquez looked at him with eyes that had seen combat, that understood loss, and that held absolutely no fear. "War leader Thaxor," she said calmly, "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Navy. I am here to inform you that the Villani people are now under human protection. Turn your fleet around, and there will be no conflict." Thaxor felt genuine amusement. "Admiral, you command one ship. I command 43, including 6 dreadnoughts. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and operating without Council authorization. This is your only chance to withdraw before you are destroyed." Vasquez smiled, and it was the smile of someone holding cards they hadn't shown yet. "War leader, I appreciate the warning, but you should know something about humanity. We're not very good at math. When we see 43 ships against one, we don't see impossible odds. We see a target-rich environment." She leaned forward slightly. "Also, you might want to check your long-range sensors. That one ship you detected? It's not alone anymore." Thaxor's blood went cold. He snapped his claws at his sensor officer. "Report." The young Krotha's voice trembled. War leader, massive FTL signatures emerging from hyperspace. I count 100, 150. War leader, there are over 200 human vessels inbound. Multiple carrier groups, dozens of cruisers, fighter squadrons. War leader, this is the largest fleet deployment in human history. The bridge fell silent. Vasquez's voice came through calm and clear. The United Earth government has authorized any means necessary to protect the Vellani refugees. We're offering you one last chance, war leader. Leave. Now. Or learn firsthand why the Galactic Council is so nervous about humanity joining their little club. Thax-Zor stared at the tactical display, watching human ships materialize from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of angry insects. 200 ships. For refugees that weren't even their own species. For people they'd never met. From a world they'd never seen. It was irrational. It was inefficient. It was madness. It was terrifying. War leader, his tactical officer, asked quietly, "Your orders?" And for the first time in his long military career, war leader Thax-Zor of the Croft Dominion made a tactical retreat. "All ships," he said through gritted mandibles, "withdraw to the secondary perimeter. We'll report this development to the High Command and await further instructions." On the screen, Admiral Vasquez nodded once. "Good choice, war leader. Safe travels." The transmission ended, and Thax-Zor sat back in his command throne, staring at the retreating icons of his fleet. He'd just backed down from a battle. Him, a war leader of the Dominion. But something told him that engaging those human ships would have been the last mistake he ever made. Aboard the Last Hope, Elder Matriarch Senna watched through the observation ports as the human fleet surrounded her refugee ships like a protective embrace. 200 vessels, their running lights piercing the darkness, forming a defensive sphere that nothing could penetrate without facing overwhelming firepower. Matriarch, her communications officer said, his skin flushed with gold and pink. "Hope and wonder. We're receiving another transmission from the humans." Admiral Vasquez appeared on the screen again, but this time her expression was softer, warmer. "Matriarch Senna," she said, "my government has authorized me to offer you and your people sanctuary. We have colony worlds with room for settlement. We have resources to spare. And we have a promise to give you. You will never face the Croth alone again. Humanity would be honored to welcome the Vellani people as friends, neighbors, and allies." Senna felt the tears come, her skin shifting to a brilliant, radiant silver, the color of overwhelming joy, of gratitude beyond words. "Admiral," she managed to say, we don't know how to thank you. Your species doesn't know us. We can offer you nothing in return. Why? Why would you do this?" Vasquez was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of history, of a species that had clawed its way up from caves and savanna, that had survived ice ages and world wars, and nearly destroyed itself a dozen times over before finally reaching the stars. "Because," she said simply, "a long time ago, my ancestors learned a hard lesson. We learned what happens when good people see suffering and look away. We learned what happens when nations close their borders and their hearts. We swore we'd never let that happen again, not if we had the power to stop it. You called out into the darkness, Matriarch Senna. And we heard you. That's all the reason we need." The journey to human space took 3 weeks. The Vellani fleet, escorted by the largest military deployment in human history, traveled through the hyperlanes while the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Ambassador Tkora of the Axorian Empire stood before the assembly, her translator making her clicking sounds into speech. "The humans have violated every protocol of diplomatic procedure," she declared. "They have interfered in a territorial dispute without Council authorization. They have deployed military force in a Council-monitored sector. They have threatened a member species with violence. This cannot stand." But then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Kelvin of the Threnal Confederacy, the same species that had denied the Vellani entry, stood slowly. He was old even by his people's standards, his scales dulled with age, but his voice carried authority. "I would like to remind this council," he said carefully, that the humans did not violate any actual council laws. They responded to a distress beacon. They offered humanitarian aid. And they successfully negotiated a peaceful resolution to what could have been a massacre. If anything, they showed remarkable restraint. They deployed 200 warships. Tkora snapped. They deployed 200 warships, Kelvin agreed, and fired not a single shot. They made a show of force, yes. But they left the choice to the Kroth. That's not aggression, Ambassador. That's deterrence. And perhaps... He paused, looking around the chamber. Perhaps it's something this council should have done ourselves. The chamber erupted into argument. Some species condemned humanity's actions. Others, quietly, began to wonder if maybe the humans had a point. And far away, in a corner of the galaxy that had once been marked as restricted space, the Villani refugees arrived at their new home. The planet was called New Haven, a human colony world in the Kepler system. It had vast oceans, breathable atmosphere, and room for millions. When the Villani ships entered orbit, they found something waiting for them. Not weapons, not bureaucracy, not endless processing and containment. They found welcome. Temporary housing had been erected. Thousands of modular shelters. Supply ships waited with food, medicine, clothing. Human families stood on the landing fields with signs and flowers, ready to help their new neighbors settle in. Children drew pictures of Villani and humans holding hands, strange and touching and beautiful in their innocent hope. Elder Matriarch Senna stepped off the transport onto solid ground for the first time in weeks. The gravity was slightly lighter than her homeworld, the air a bit colder, but it was real. It was safe. A human approached her, a woman with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple uniform with a patch that read Colonial Integration Office. Matriarch Senna, the woman said, bowing slightly. My name is Dr. Sarah Chun. On behalf of the people of Earth and all human colonies, welcome home. Senna's skin flickered through a dozen colors before settling on a warm, deep gold. Dr. Chun, she said softly, why? I must understand. Your admiral said your people learned a lesson. But what lesson teaches you to risk war for strangers? Dr. Chun smiled sadly. Come, she said. Let me show you something. She led Senna to a memorial at the edge of a landing field. It was simple, a black stone wall with names etched into it. Thousands upon thousands of names. These are refugees, Dr. Chun explained. People who fled wars and genocides on Earth, back before we reached the stars. Some of them were welcomed. Some of them were turned away. And those who were turned away, they died. We remember them, Matriarch. We remember what it cost when we closed our hearts. She turned to face Senna directly. We remember because we swore we'd never be the ones who turn away again. Not ever. No matter the cost. And there, on a new world under strange stars, two alien species wept together. 6 months later, the Galactic Council voted to upgrade humanity's status from Class 7 probationary to Class 4 associate member. It wasn't full membership. Humanity was still too young, too unpredictable, too human for that. But it was recognition. More importantly, 17 other species quietly approached human ambassadors, asking about trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. The galaxy had noticed something important. Humanity didn't just have powerful ships. They had something far more dangerous than weapons. They had principles. And they were willing to fight for them. The Villani thrived on New Haven. Within a year, they'd begun building new cities, blending their elegant architecture with human practicality. Villani scientists worked alongside human researchers. Villani children played in the streets with human children, learning to laugh in 2 languages. And Elder Matriarch Senna lived to see her people not just survive, but flourish. She lived to see the first Villani Human Joint Art Exhibition. She lived to see a Villani composer write a symphony that made both species weep. She lived to see her granddaughter marry a human engineer and build a life that spanned 2 worlds. She lived to see hope reborn. Admiral Elena Vasquez retired 3 years after the Villani rescue, but her legacy lived on. The Indomitable was preserved as a museum ship, a reminder of the day humanity announced to the galaxy who they truly were. On the memorial wall at New Haven, they added a new inscription, written in both Galactic Common and English. They pleaded for sanctuary. Humanity answered with kindness and an armada. Let this stand as testament. There are those who see suffering and turn away, and there are those who hear a cry for help and run toward the danger, no matter the cost. On this day, humanity chose to run toward the darkness, and 2 million souls found light. May we never forget. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to understand it, to wonder at these strange, emotional, irrational humans who would risk war for the sake of strangers. And slowly, quietly, the galaxy began to change. Other species started asking themselves uncomfortable questions. If humanity could do this, what did it say about the rest of them? If these emotional primitives could find the courage to stand against injustice, what excuse did the ancient, wise civilizations have for looking away? The Galactic Council would never be the same. And perhaps, in a galaxy that had grown cold and pragmatic over millions of years of stability, that wasn't such a bad thing. This is humanity. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the oldest or the wisest. But we are the ones who answer when someone screams into the void. We are the ones who look at impossible odds and say, "Try us." We are the ones who remember what it means to be refugees, to be desperate, to be alone in the darkness. And we are the ones who swore we would never let that happen to anyone else, not while we still had ships to fly and hearts to care. The galaxy called us dangerous. They called us unpredictable. They called us too emotional, too unstable, too willing to fight. They were right about all of it. But they forgot the most important thing. We're also the ones who will stand between the weak and the strong, between the innocent and the predators, between despair and hope. And we will never, ever back down. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Leave a comment telling us what you would have done in Admiral Vasquez's position. Would you have risked everything for strangers? And subscribe for more HFY stories that celebrate what makes humanity special. Because the universe needs to remember, when someone calls for help, humans answer. Always. This is our galaxy now, and we're going to make it better.